there's two different tragedies here that Jesus is talking about, but they're kind of similar. The first one is that there were these people who were doing the right thing. The people that were murdered by Pilate, they were doing what they were supposed to be doing. They were supposed to be making sacrifices to God in the temple. So they were doing the right thing, but they were killed for it. It's not fair. And then you've got this other tragedy with this tower falling. And we don't really know anything about it, except for what we read here. We don't know anything about this tower, even that it existed, except for what's in the Bible. So basically, all we have to go on is what it sounds like. These people were doing whatever it is you were normally doing on a day in Jerusalem then, and a tower fell on them. And that's it. Dead. One of those kind of act of God things. It's not fair. That's what tragedy is. You know, it's when something terrible happens, and it's not fair. We don't complain about how it's not fair when somebody is trying to rob somebody and they get in a shootout with the police and they get killed. We don't complain about that because it's a bad person doing a bad thing and something bad happens to them. And that makes sense. It's when it's not fair that we struggle. And that's when we kind of start asking the why me question. Or, you know, as this questioner asks, you know, why we ask, well, why does it happen to me? Well, why not? You know, why not me? I mean, these things happen all the time around us. Why not me? What makes me so special that they cannot happen to me? It's terrifying to think about these things happening to us. It's literally terrifying because it changes us. Thinking about it changes us. You know, when we think about some of the things described in this question: chronic illness, long suffering, being in a hospice bed. These are terrifying. They change the way we act. They change the way that we function. And when tragedy happens, that changes us as well. It completely forces us to rethink everything. And it changes not just our thought process, but our reactions as well. How we respond to things, you know. I remember, something happened and I was irritated. I just kind of flopped down once in disgust. And I remember watching my wife's whole family just react with horror because of the memory of her father falling and dying. And it created like a post-traumatic reaction. And that happens a lot. It doesn't just happen to soldiers in Iraq. You know, it happens to us normally when bad stuff, happens. I mean, I have some of it from Columbine. I wasn't even there until 4 months after it happened. But all the stuff that happened, sometimes things happen in life, and I find myself, it brings back a memory from that, and I react like that without even thinking about it. It rewires our brain, and that's terrifying. It's terrifying to think about being changed that way. It's terrifying to think about it happening to us, and it's terrifying thinking about how we're going to respond to it and what it's going to do for our lives. And so the temptation, when we see it, or we see it in someone else, or it happens to us, whatever happens, is to keep safe, to prevent it from affecting us by putting it in a wall. We're in Lent, and we're talking about walls, and the walls that separate us from God and other people. And the temptation is always to take our tragedies and put them in a wall and pretend like they didn't happen. And just let them go. Let them be. Forget about it. Don't worry about it. Don't think about it. And when other people have them, we want to do that to ourselves as well. We want to put ourselves within a wall so that what happened to them doesn't affect me, doesn't change me, doesn't bother me, doesn't hurt me, doesn't upset me, doesn't make me have to rethink my life. We like to put tragedy in a safe place where we don't have to deal with it. That's exactly what Jesus says in this to not do. What he's saying here is to deal with it. It's to look at it. And I expected him to say something kind of nice. You know, I mean, the pictures we have of Jesus, the paintings, he's kind of doe-eyed, patting kids on the head, he's comforting people, he's holding people in need, and all that may be true. You would think that here he would say, well, offer some words of comfort. I don't know, some words of hope, some words that it's going to be okay. But he just kind of lays it out there. And he kind of says, look, what you need to do is, you need to use this as an opportunity to look at your own life. To rethink intentionally the way that you do things. Implied in that is that you cannot. You cannot do it. You cannot rethink it. You cannot put intentional effort in it. You can try and put it behind a wall and just pretend like it's not there. But stuff like this comes out. Comes out. It changes us one way or the other. If you try and put it behind a wall, that's going to change you. If you let it out, it's going to change you. One is intentional, the other is not. One is something that can be positive. You can actually learn positive things through tragedy. The other is going to result in negative behaviors that are going to cause problems. They're going to cause hurtful reactions and things that are not going to be so good. And you know, it's also, putting it behind a wall is not the example that Jesus gives us. Because if you think about it, the dude had a wall. I mean, he was with God. You know, and they were together, and he didn't have to deal with all the tragedy. He didn't have to deal with the mess. He didn't have to deal with the suffering and